I'm Cheryl Chumley. This is Bold and Blunt, giving you a Christian conservative view of news, politics, culture, and events. Yael Eckstein, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt video. It's so great to have you here.
It is an honor to be with you. I miss being with you in person in Texas like we were just a few days ago, but I love being with you here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I look so forward to getting the update on what you guys at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews have been doing in Israel. You as president of this organization, what's the latest campaigns that you have going? And first off, are you in Israel right now?
I am in Israel right now. I'm following reports that actually in the city that I'm at, they say there's like a potential for an imminent attack. And so these are our lives right now, waiting for potential rocket attacks. The Houthis have been recently raising the awareness here in Israel on the attacks of drones and ballistic missiles that they threatened to send to Israel. Of course, we have Iran, and we continue to face the threats from Hamas and Hezbollah. And so here on the ground in Israel, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is always helping with whatever needs arise, both as far as things that we could plan, like we have a big food distribution for the holiday of Passover to poor Jewish people in Israel, but also things that we can't plan, that when there are rocket attacks, we're placing more bomb shelters, we're bringing more emergency kits to bomb shelters. When there are shooting attacks and terror attacks, we're distributing bulletproof vests and helmets. So we both have our work plan that feeds the hungry, clothes the naked, shelters the poor, but we also have our emergency programs that we are able to build and implement in a matter of hours as the need arises.
So I want people to understand that you guys aren't just shipping aid in from, by mail. You guys actually go to the scenes where it's most dangerous. And I was watching a video a few days ago that you actually set up a soup kitchen right on the border of Lebanon where, the community's in devastation, but there you are distributing food to those in need. What's going on at the border since you get so close to some of these hostile areas? What do you see taking place now?
Yeah, that's a really important point, Cheryl. And I think it's what distinguishes the fellowship from any other organizations. We are on the ground in the war zones from Eilat, which is the southern point of Israel on the border with Jordan and Egypt, and just 14 kilometers away from Saudi Arabia, all the way to the soup kitchen you're referring to, which is in Kiryat Shmona, just a mile away from Lebanon. And actually that soup kitchen, which didn't miss even one day of distributing meals since October 7th, was hit by a direct rocket. And within 24 hours, we were still producing and distributing the hundreds of meals. For people who rely on us, I see it as a moral, ethical, and spiritual obligation that last year during 2024, the year of war where Israel was fighting war on 7 different fronts, the fellowship distributed over 3 million meals to people in need. And it's both that physical sustenance and nourishment and support, but it's also the message behind it. Because what the fellowship represents is millions of people abroad, Christians, Jews, mostly in America, who are sending $40 for a food box and saying, tell the people of Israel that they're not alone. And that message, whether you're on the border with Lebanon or the border with Syria or in Jerusalem or even in Tel Aviv, is a message that, especially now with the rise in anti-Semitism, desperately needs to be heard.
Which really quickly, before we get into what's going on right now in Israel and the politics of the situation, but how can people donate? Because I know that you are driven by donations.
Thank you so much. And so I want to really stress that every single dollar helps. We have donors who give $5, donors who give $50, donors who give $500, but it represents both this grassroots effort of people, individuals who are giving what they can in order to stand with Israel and to feed the hungry and enable our life-saving programs, whether they're bomb shelters or meals. So people who want to donate can go to www.ifcj.org. And you can follow me on social media where you can see how those donations are being used and what life in Israel looks like. So you can follow me at Yael Eckstein on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever you like to get your social news.
So, one of the things that struck me when we first met in Israel over a year ago when I was there on the ground was the fact that many Jews had fled their communities near the borders. And it was almost like they were refugees in their own nation, right? They were fleeing their homes. And many were afraid to go back because the situation was still hostile. Well, it still is today. So, how many Jews have gone back home, or are those border communities still largely vacant?
It's such an important point that most people abroad don't understand and don't realize kind of this reality that Israel's facing right now, living in. We're a tiny country the size of New Jersey, and people had to be evacuated, entire towns and cities from both northern Israel because of the threat of Hezbollah in Lebanon and southern Israel because of the threat of Hamas from the Gaza Strip. And at one point, we had over 160,000 refugees inside of Israel who had to leave their homes, their communities, their businesses, their schools. It broke apart not only that physical feeling of safety and security, but also just of the reality that there was no community, there was no neighbors, there was no support, and people lost their businesses. And so that's why the fellowship was so dedicated to being there for those refugees, these internally displaced people. That in a tiny country with 10 million citizens, we just reached 10 million citizens this year, to have over 150,000 internally displaced people without work or school or community is a big deal. So now in southern Israel, around 95% of the population have gone back. And the reason why they've gone back is because they say we're the first line of defense. If we don't go there, then the terrorists will move in. If we don't settle this land, then someone else will. And so they're still living now around a mile from the Gaza Strip, where we've seen through the year and a half of fighting, the Hamas terrorists don't wear army uniform. They wear civilian uniforms. And so what people here in Israel are saying is that, during the war, everyone was a civilian. And the second the ceasefire took hold, everyone's Hamas, because you see almost everyone now in Gaza wearing the Hamas uniforms, full rule under this terror group, which is a mile away from Israeli cities, and where the Hamas terrorists have said they're going to do more and more October 7th attacks, even worse, and make it all the way to Jerusalem. So those heroes down south have returned to their homes, but they are scared, they're vulnerable, the economy has not yet been rebuilt. And so the fellowship is there to do the little we can to place bomb shelters, to say, okay, we're going to provide you with safety in whatever way we can. To those civilian first responders who are responsible to protecting their cities if terrorists invade, giving them bulletproof and shrapnel-proof vehicles, which enable them to go out during attacks and fight the terrorists. And so down south, people have mostly gone back, but there's more needs than ever in helping them acclimate to this new reality. Up north, only around 45% of the population has gone back. And actually today is only the first day since October 7th that the school systems have operated. Oh, and so up north, there hasn't been school for over a year and a half, and it breaks apart so much in the fabric of society, along with the physical structure. I was in Metula, which is the northernmost city of Israel, literally on the border with Lebanon, less than a mile. And as I drove through the town, every single home was hit by a rocket or shrapnel at least once. There were some homes that were hit 3 separate times by rocket attacks. Yeah. And so the rebuilding is enormous, but the resilience, Cheryl, is something that inspires me.
So let's just wrap up with this last question, because the political situation is something that I know Israelis pay attention to as well. And in America, of course, we have a new administration, completely different type of policy toward Israel. What is the word on the ground from Israel? Are Jews looking with more optimism at the future with this new administration in the White House, or does it not change most perspectives?
So I think there's the perspective and the reality of the Jews, and then there's the perspective and reality of all people who want freedom and want to stand against this terror organization of Hamas and the axis of terror that we see all around us here in the Middle East. Right now in Syria, there's been a massacre the past 4 days, over 1,000 innocent people killed. They were mostly Alawites and Christians, but we see this as Islamic terror that's affecting everyone in the Middle East. So I think the policies of America, it's really important important to state that in Israel, we have over 2 million Muslims, Bedouins, Druze, Christians, minorities who enjoy full freedom to vote, freedom to represent their communities in the government, free healthcare, free education. And the threat of Hamas is just as much a threat to them as it is to Jews. There have been Arabs and Bedouins who were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th, who haven't even been returned yet to Israel. So it's really a question of people who sanctify life and believe in freedom versus these barbarian terrorists that threaten us all. And so I think the whole issue of anti-Semitism and on college campuses, that's a Jewish problem specifically. But I think there are so many more people also who care about it and realize if we let that get out of hand, it might start with the Jews, but it's not going to end with the Jews. And so regarding the new administration, I think everyone is waiting and holding their breath and hoping that this new philosophy, this new political strategy will bring new blessings, new answers, new opportunities. And that is yet to be seen.
Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for spending a few minutes on Bold and Blonde, all the way from Israel. So nice to see you again.
My honor. Thank you so much for hosting me.